The Florida Gators pass rush is going to be one of the strongest parts of their team in 2025.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Friday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. And like I said, the Florida Gators pass rush. This is me calling my shot, essentially. Essentially. That makes no sense. Essentially, calling my shot with this pass rush. I mean, when you look at what the Florida Gators, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, when you look at what the Florida Gators are bringing back in their pass rush unit, you've got Caleb Banks, who had the most pressures on the team, followed by Tyreek Sapp, who had the second most pressures on the team, followed by George Gumbs, who had the third most pressures on the team. All three of those guys are coming back for 2025. And I mean, just for numbers, Caleb Banks had 29 pressures, Tyreek Sapp had 26, George Gumbs also had 26. And if you know me, you know that I typically value pressures more than sacks. I think that pressures lead to a lot more in the long run, and they're more sustainable to create there, and as opposed to sacks where great play in a moment, but not exactly a sustainable thing to create consistently. But getting back Caleb Banks is huge. Getting back Tyreek Sapp is huge, and George Gumbs is huge because all of them, all three of those coming back will be starters. Will be another year with the defense, and I do think that Caleb Banks, again, with another year with Gerald Chapman, should make him even more dominant, especially when you look at a Caleb Banks. He really turned it on at the end of the year. More than half of his pressures came in the last 4 games. Tyreek Sapp, he was one that also turned it on at the end of the year. More than half of his pressures came in those final 4 games. George Gumbs as well was someone who, by the way, did surprise. He's also still just learning how to play edge because he is playing the jack linebacker spot for the Florida Gators. Played 1 year at jack for Northern Illinois, but was a tight end previously or prior to that. George Gumbs is just learning how to play jack now. Hopefully another year with him, learning the position will help him take that next step as a pass rusher that the Florida Gators need. Then you look at the youth of the team, right? Cam James was 4th on your defense in pressures created. Cam James, someone that I don't think many people were looking at as someone that was going to be a significant contributor, which he ended up becoming a significant contributor, played the 14th most snaps on the entire team. And, I mean, along the defensive front, played more snaps than anybody other than George Gumbs, Caleb Banks, Tyreek Sapp, Cam Jackson, and TJ Searcy. 6th most snaps on the defensive line. And so you've got that now figured out with Cam James taking another developmental step, playing more snaps, because again, TJ Searcy's gone, played more snaps than Cam James there. So you're replacing that. And also you've got about 340 snaps from Jack Pyburn cleared up. But also you've got LJ McCray in year 2. And LJ McCray is someone that when he was coming out of high school was very high on, but he was all traits, no development there yet. He needed more development. He was good for a high school player, but not for an SEC pass rusher. You need to see that development there from him. You're going to get Jamari Lyons back as well, which is a name that I feel like most people have kind of stopped mentioning, which is odd to me. Prior to the 2024 season, Jamari Lyons was mentioned as someone that everybody thought was going to take the next step and be the next great interior pass rusher for the Florida Gators. That was going to be a big selling point. And then he got hurt. And it was, that's a big loss for the year. And then since the season ended, I feel like whenever we've talked about 2025, I don't think many people have mentioned, hey, Jamari Lyons is going to be back and healthy and could be a very key contributor to this defense. Playing alongside Caleb Banks, Caleb Banks, Tyreek Sapp, George Gumbs, and Jamari Lyons. If Jamari Lyons reaches what his expectations were for 2024, if he reaches that in 2025, we're cooking. And don't forget, this isn't an injury that I think is going to be carrying over into next year for Jamari Lyons. Because when he first got injured, it was a fractured ankle, if I'm not mistaken, was the actual injury. But Billy Napier was like, yeah, he's probably going to miss the full year. So there was a chance he would come back in 2024 anyway. When the injury first happened, there was a chance. Obviously, that didn't happen, but now you should have him very healthy for the spring and fall ball. So your front is returning quite a few players. Your front is returning a couple of guys that are expected to take big developmental steps in Cam James, LJ McCray, and Jamari Lyons when he's healthy. And then also just your pass rush in general for Florida involved quite a bit of using linebackers as pass rushers as well. You're going to get Jaden Robinson back, who wasn't blitzed often, but when he was incredibly effective on them. 30 blitzes the entire year, had 8 pressures. Sharif Denson, 31 blitzes on the entire year, had 6 pressures. You're talking about guys that are coming back and should be able to contribute there. So having a Jaden Robinson back who is very effective as a pass rusher, and I do want to bring up one name that I think is going to be very effective as a pass rusher this year, Myles Graham. Myles Graham is someone that, of course, was behind multiple senior, and by senior I just mean upperclassmen linebackers, higher class than him. He was behind them, blitzed 18 times, had 4 pressures in those 18 reps. Myles Graham is, I think, going to be an explosive off-ball linebacker when it comes to rushing the passer. Okay? And I think Florida has had quite a few guys that have been really freaking good as far as being just explosive contributors as pass rushers from the off-ball spot. But there's a name that I always think of when I talk about off-ball linebacker that is one hell of a blitzer and a Florida Gator, Gerard Davis. He was a dude that I love that. That was a big reason that he was a first-round pick, because the Lions were like, hey, we can use him and just weaponize him. He was incredibly efficient as a blitzer from the off-ball linebacker spot. I think Myles Graham can kind of replicate the success that Davis brought to the table and brought to the team. And that's how I look at Myles Graham. Don't forget, Myles Graham is a guy that used to play running back, just explosive athlete. And when you allow him to blitz, you allow him to just straight line speed into the backfield through the A gap between the defensive tackles occupying the interior offensive lineman. When you teach him how to time it up, which is what Gerard Davis was really freaking good at, that acceleration and timing the blitzes, when you teach Myles Graham how to do that effectively, efficiently, and consistently, he's going to destroy quarterbacks. It's going to be really fun to watch. But the Florida Gators pass rush is going to be, I think, a very strong part of this team in 2025, more so than it was in 2024. Toward the end of the year, I think you can not get that level of dominance for the entire season. I don't think that's realistic to expect, because they were on a whole other world to end the season. But I do think that you can get much better, more consistent pass rush throughout the entirety of the season than you got last year. Okay, we're going to flip to the offensive side of the ball to wrap up the rest of today's show when we get back with Locked On Gators. Attending NFL playoff games is an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans are unmatched. I don't know if I will ever get to experience one again being a New York Giants fan. That's gonna be pretty rough to see a home playoff game for the New York Giants. I might have a better chance of them hosting a Super Bowl again, but if the New York Giants do make it to the playoffs, I'll be using Game Time. Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so that you can focus on what matters, being there. I used Game Time Picks, 3 weeks ago to get Knicks tickets while I was in Washington, D.C. The night before, I bought tickets for the game. went to it. We were at the bar. Said, why not? They're in town. We're in town. Let's have some fun. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem code Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. And like I said, the Florida Gators the Florida Gators pass rush in 2025, I do think will be a strength considering how they ended the season, rushing the passer and translating that to the next year. You're bringing back a lot of your pass rushing production. And you should see quite a big step from guys like LJ McCray and Cam James. Another part that I think will be very successful for the Florida Gators in 2025, their run game. We talked about this yesterday with the offensive line and just gauging what the offensive production is going to look like, engaging what the offense will look like. And I do think that a big part of what you can see from this offense is going to be from the offensive line. Jake Slaughter, All-American center, is back for another year. Austin Barber, back for another year. Najee Harris, back for another year. Damian George, back for another year. Bryce Lovett, back for another year. All of those offensive linemen that I just named played over 350 snaps last year. Then you've got guys that have contributed a little bit and will hopefully be able to contribute more significantly in 2025, like Rod Kearney, someone that I'm a huge fan of. Devin Manuel came in from the transfer portal and was kind of expected to be, hey, he's going to compete right now, but long-term we'll have him for another year if he stays healthy there. Fletcher Westphal in year 2 is going to be helpful. Jason Santamella, be helpful as well. You've got 4/5 of your starting offensive line returning. Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon is the only one that's gone. You've got some guys that you could look at a Bryce Lovett and you could say, hey, he played all along the offensive line. He played in the bowl game at right tackle and played really freaking well at right tackle. Maybe that's a translatable thing because don't forget he was playing against Tulane, which not a knock on Tulane, but Tulane's edges are not really SEC size and length and speed and athleticism, so that might not be as translatable. But if he can play right tackle, that could be huge for you. And I think even if he doesn't, you're going to have likely 4 starters starting again. I know that I'm not a huge fan of Damian George. I know that quite a few of you aren't a huge fan of Damian George. But if he's back for 2025, he's probably going to be starting in 2025. Based on how this coaching staff moves, that should be the expectation. That would mean that you return your starting left tackle, starting left guard, starting center, starting right guard. That continuity is huge. We've talked about this a ton. I will always bring this up. I don't care how exhausting it gets. But for me, offensive line play, good offensive line play is more about the unit and the chemistry of the unit and the continuity of the unit as opposed to just who's the best offensive lineman. For me, it has been and always will be about the continuity of the unit and the chemistry of the unit. And so for Florida to have 4 starters back, that should take you to the next level as far as developing the offensive line and actually being able to string together some successful performances from them. Okay? And so having that back is huge. I genuinely think that. Even, yes, you're replacing your right tackle. Yes, I'm not very optimistic about Damian George. But again, that's one player on an offensive line of 5 that I do think that you could see that next step from the rest of them. Okay? I do think having them together again as a unit is huge, especially when you have so much returning talent around you. And so I think having them back is huge. I do think Bryce Lovett maybe being at right tackle is huge. I loved what we saw from Caden Jones and limited snaps from him at right tackle. Let the young guys compete for right tackle at this point. I don't think that unless you can convince someone to enter the transfer portal that is a starter quality, SEC starter quality offensive tackle, I don't think you're going to go and upgrade the position, right? You're at the point where it's like, hey, you kind of got to develop what you have. And for Florida, for years, the Florida Gators have, and by 3 years, I do mean the Billy Napier tenure, have recruited tall, big athletes on the offensive line. And most of them have a nasty streak to them. That's been a big thing that you notice with the Florida Gators offensive line recruits under Rob Sale, Darnell Stapleton previously, Jonathan DeCoster, is that they bring in offensive tackles and offensive linemen that are physical. Maybe you go and say, hey, Bryce Lovett, you're going to be playing right tackle. We'll figure it out then. We'll figure out everything else after that. You're going to have Rod Kearney back, by the way, who, this is another year that I'm asking this, but just let Rod Kearney compete for a starting spot. Just let him compete for it. If he loses, he loses. That's fine. But let him compete for it. All right? Cam Waits is still with the program, regardless of how you feel about him, regardless of how I feel about him. Cam Waits is still with the program. Devin Manuel, again, Arkansas offensive tackle for a couple years, started for them for a little bit, then got hurt, lost the job when he got back, went to Florida, eventually got played out of the lineup, which I will say this. I wasn't a huge fan of what I saw from Devin Manuel last year, but I will also say that Austin Barber, pretty good year, left tackle. Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon, really good year at right tackle. Makes sense why Devin Manuel wouldn't play. It's not a knock on him, I think, in my opinion. I'm not saying it's a big knock on him. He just went up against two tackles that were good. Tough to beat that, right? So that's how I look at that, at least. So Devin Manuel, give him a crack at right tackle. Just let the guys compete. Bryce Lovett, Caden Jones, Devin Manuel, let them compete at right tackle and see what you get there. And see if you can have everybody work out and find some kind of cohesive unit together. I do think it's possible. I'm not saying it's not at all. I do think that's a very possible thing for the Florida Gators to do. Their run game should be good. And that's not even talking about the returning running backs that you've got. You've got Jaden Ballback, who was your leading rusher in 2024. He had 670 yards, 7 touchdowns. You got Jacoby Jackson back, 506 yards. He was your third leading rusher. Montrell was the one in between them. Jacoby had 7 touchdowns there. Trayon Webb's going to be back and healthy. We'll see what he contributes to the running back room. Katie Daniels had that great play in the bowl game, the fumble recovery. He showed flashes. And he's, again, someone that I was a huge fan of coming out of high school because I loved his vision. I still do. I think that Jabbar Luke has done a great job recruiting running backs with great vision because at that point, it's like, hey, just get them behind a competent offensive line and we'll figure out the rest later. And so Katie Daniels gives you that. Not to mention you just brought in 3 freshman running backs. We'll see if any of them can crack the rotation and figure that out. But also you're going to have DJ Lagway back and healthy. And I'm not saying DJ Lagway is Anthony Richardson. I would never say that. But DJ Lagway is at least a respectable threat with his legs that defenses need to make a decision. You either respect him as a runner or he can make you pay. And so when you see RPO plays, you're going to have to either pay attention to him or he's going to have the option to just take it himself and pick up a chunk. I don't think DJ is going to be picking up, 45-yard runs or anything like that. I don't think that that's what he's going to be doing. I don't think that's what he wants to do, and I don't think that's what the expectation should be for him to do. But he keeps it, picks up a first down, slides, safe. We're cool with it. You just have to be athletic enough to make them pay. That's the important part here. It's just about being athletic enough to make defenses pay if they don't respect you. And that run game will help the Florida Gators passing game in 2025, which is something that I do think they'll be able to capitalize on with the deep ball specifically. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Gators. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. To wrap up today's episode of Locked On Gators, we're going to be talking about this Florida Gators passing attack. Like I mentioned, the run game going to play a huge part in it, right? The run game being successful in 2025, which they should be. Again, everybody's going to have for pass rush, run game. They're all going to have another year. Trench warfare, another year with Tyler Miles, strength and conditioning program, which seems to be improved from what it used to be under Mark Hockey. Now that you've got more time to develop there, we'll see what you got there. But that successful run game is going to open up an explosive play-action passing attack. Florida with DJ Lagway, they were killers with the deep ball and on play action. DJ Lagway went 46 for 71 on the play action pass, 65% passing, 10% better from what he was without play action, right? 11.5 yards per attempt on those plays, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks on those plays. And by the way, he went 46 for 71 with 4 drops. So really should have been 50 for 71. Should have been even better there. So DJ Lagway, when using play action, was really freaking good. And sometimes that was when the run game wasn't working, which, by the way, again, I want to throw this out there. And people always complain about it because they don't respect facts and they don't respect statistics and analytics. You don't need a successful run game to have a successful play action passing attack. You don't need a successful run game for your play action passing attack to be better than your non-play action passing attack. A good run game makes all those things more effective. But to be clear, you don't need a good run game to make your play action passing attack effective. But you should have a good run game this year, which means your play action passing attack should benefit even more from that. DJ Lagway should develop better as a passer. That's something that I've talked about quite a bit. I know a lot of people hate when I bring it up because I bring it up a lot because it's what I think is true. And like I've said on the show, I don't care if I'm right or wrong. I really don't. I don't get paid to be right or wrong. I get paid to entertain and educate. We'll flip those in order because I do think that educating is more important. Entertaining as well. Having an opinion. Standing by it. I don't care if I'm right or wrong. As long as I can put my name on something and say, hey, this is my opinion, I'm cool with it. My opinion, DJ Lagway needs to step up in 2025. And again, I do think he will step up in 2025. He was a true freshman in 2024. I don't expect him to be awesome as a true freshman. For a true freshman, he was awesome. But as far as just being a quarterback, he wasn't awesome. He has room to grow. And again, I think he will grow with that time that he's got to develop and with the time he's going to put in this offseason. Personal quarterback trainer has been on the show before. He's going to take those steps. I truly believe that he will take those steps. I do think that college game is way different from what he was doing at Willis. Because I think so much of what he did at Willis was bad offensive line, cause plays to break down, cause things to just become complete chaos, complete havoc. And he had to adapt to that and try to make a play off of that. And it wasn't so much, hey, I'm playing quarterback here. I'm dropping back. I'm making my reads and I'm making throws. It was, hey, I'm dropping back. Things are already crumbling in front of me. I need to go make a play here. He's getting to play quarterback. He's getting to take those developmental steps that I think will be huge for him. With him taking those steps, it opens up everything. Also, you will have a healthy Tre Wilson this year. All right? And that is going to open up everything underneath. There wasn't a good underneath passing game for the Florida Gators in 2024. Like I've been saying this whole time, they were playing unsustainable football. It was deep ball or run game. Now with Tre Wilson, you should be able to have some catch and run opportunities underneath. Let me throw a stat at you, right? Because, I am with the stats. I like to throw it out. It's easier to translate than talking about film or showing film. Tre Wilson played 4 games in 2024. Okay? He played 4 games in 2024. He was 3rd on the team in yards after catch, behind only Elijah Badger and Chim Dike. Tre Wilson had 214 yards after the catch in 2024. Okay? That was less than 40 yards behind Chim Dike and Elijah Badger. For reference, Chim Dike had 42 catches, Elijah Badger had 39 catches, Tre Wilson had 19 catches. Okay? Chim Dike had 252 yards after the catch. Elijah Badger had 249. Tre Wilson had 214. He was less than 40 yards behind guys that played the entire season and had more than double the catches than he did. Okay? And yeah, part of that is because Tre Wilson was the underneath guy. But that kind of explosive, at 11.5 yards after the catch per catch. That kind of explosive playmaking talent is what the Florida Gators need. It's what they lacked in 2024. You look at who was behind Tre Wilson in yards after catch that's returning, Hayden Hansen. That's your second most yards after catch returning is Hayden Hansen. Then Aiden Mizell. Then Jacoby Jackson. Like that's what we're talking about. You've got the most explosive yards after catch threat coming back for 2025 in Tre Wilson, and he's going to be healthy. Okay, and I count him more than I count running backs yards after the catch because they're catching it in the backfield, like way in the backfield. So you got Tre Wilson coming back, and that should open up so much. And also, like I just mentioned, Hayden Hansen. The tight end involvement towards the end of the year picked up quite a bit. I do think that without Arliss Boardingham, your team's better. Okay, and this isn't to dunk on Arliss or anything like that. He went to Bowling Green, which, by the way, I'm a Toledo guy. So I am going to be very much looking forward to how Toledo handles him. But even to Bowling Green, he's probably about to put up a lot of stats. They just had a tight end, Harold Fannin Jr., just went absolutely off this year. Like, you look at I'm just going to talk about this for a second. You look at tight end production in 2024, and there's two names that come up a lot when you talk about their catches and yards and touchdowns. And it's Tyler Warren at Penn State, and it's Harold Fannin Jr. Tyler Warren played 3 more games than Harold Fannin Jr., and Harold Fannin Jr. had 13 more catches, 330 more yards, 2 more touchdowns. Arliss is going to be really productive this year, probably. Besides that, your Florida Gators offense just got better without him because you've got better blocking all around with Hayden and Tony Livingston as a duo. You've also got Amir Jackson in year 2 now coming up with the offense. And like we've always said, and like Hayden Hansen has said, tight end is the figure it out position in this offense. You need time to learn it. You need time to be able to execute it. Amir Jackson should have that time now. You got Caleb Rillos coming back. No idea what he's going to be as a pass catcher because he's coming from an option offensive blocker. But you're getting that back, and that's important for your offense as well. Thanks for being Locked On Gators, your first listen of the day, every day. We are available daily and free, reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work for New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.